How will forest fires be prevented and managed in Southwest Oregon in 2022? City, county, state, and federal agencies recently gathered in Medford to participate in a fire preparedness forum hosted by State Representative Kim Wallan. The discussion presented a unique opportunity for the public to hear how these key agencies are working together for the best possible outcomes this fire season.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. I am State Representative Kim Wallan. I represent most of the city of Medford in the state legislature. And one of the features of being in the state legislature is that when different agencies have briefings to give, they give them. I'm one of the people that gets them. The county commissioners get them, the city councilors, the mayor gets them, but it's very rare that it comes out to the public. The individual agencies, the Forest Service, the emergency manager, the Oregon Department of Forestry, they all have their own public information directors, and they all do that kind of thing individually, but it's very rare to have them all in the same room and giving a briefing to the public from each of them. So that's what I wanted tonight to be. So thank you for coming. We do have several members of the press here, but what we're hoping to hear from the different agencies is what they are doing to prepare now for fire season. We've all been so affected by smoke and fires, particularly the wildland fires. And so mostly this is going to be a wildland fire presentation. I meant to say that. Even though we were sorely affected by the Labor Day fires in 2020 that devastated our cities, our air quality is seriously affected by these wildland fires. And so that's what the focus is for tonight. That's why we have representatives from the Forest Service, from the Oregon Department of Forestry, from the Sheriff's Department, because they are responsible for the whole county, whether it's a wildland fire or an urban fire. And we also will hear from the Jackson County Emergency Manager. And I'm going to brag on Jackson County for 1 second, which I hope isn't stealing somebody else's thunder. State law requires that every county have an emergency manager. Very few counties comply. I'm very proud of the fact that Jackson County does have an emergency manager who works well with the Josephine County emergency manager, and she's going to give us some of the things that she does. So we're hoping to get a bit of a preview of what these folks anticipate the fire season is going to be like this year, what they're doing to prepare, and what, if anything, you can do to prepare, or at least be aware as you go out into the community and talk with your friends. So I'm going to get started. We have an agenda. Oh, also, I didn't know whether to plan for 5 people or 500 people. You never know when you give a party how many people are going to show up. So I had said I wasn't sure we were going to do a Q&A, because if we did have a lot of people, it was going to be very hard to manage that. But we have few enough that we might have just 5 or 10 minutes at the end for questions. If you don't get your questions answered and we don't have time, then you can always email me at my state representative account. You can Google it. It's easy to find online. And I will get answers to your questions for you. And hopefully, they're going to answer most of your questions, though, just by the presentations that they give. So, also, it says on the agenda, I'm supposed to give you a legislative update. In Salem, we do have the opportunity to present different kinds of bills and try to garner enough votes in the legislative process to get a new law passed. And I have tried for several sessions to get a law passed that whoever comes upon a wildland fire, they can put it out, because that is not the rule right now. So I have not gotten any traction on that. I got a hearing one time, but that's as far as it went. Never made it to the House floor or the Senate or to the governor to sign. So that is not the current policy. I think we'll hear more about that from our forest people. And they're just trying to get DEQ to admit that the air quality that's being driven by the wildland fires, and sometimes by the fact that there's a lot of firing operations that keep the smoke really bad for us, DEQ just absolutely shrugs that off. I've tried to find ways to get them to care about our air quality, and even though they are who the federal system requires to take care of our environmental quality, they have not decided to take up that mantle yet. So I do try to find ways to develop legislation that will put that in their pocket, put that in their sights, but hasn't happened yet. But you all know, because you live here, that having that air quality that bad in the summer is, in fact, very detrimental to our environment and to our quality of life. So I always welcome ideas, legislative ideas, things that I can propose, and we'll see if we can ever get traction. I always say there's the right policy. You can have all the right words in the right bill, in the right language, but then you have to find a political path. You have to get 31 votes in the House and 16 votes in the Senate, and then you got to get it in front of the governor to sign it. And even though we pass a lot of bills every year, and we do pass a lot of bills every year, there's a lot more that die. There's a lot more ideas that don't get passed and don't ever get a hearing. So, all right, I'm going to move on. The first person we have is Dan Quinones from the U.S. Forest Service, and he's going to give us the Rogue Siskiyou update.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you, Representative Wallan, for the invite. Hey, as was stated, my name is Dan Quinones. I'm the Fire and Aviation Staff Officer for the Rogue River Siskiyou National Forest in Southwest Oregon. For those of you that aren't familiar with how our forest lays out, we are 1.8 million acres. We have 5 districts stretching from the Pacific Crest Trail to the ocean, the Umpqua National Forest south, and we actually have some lands that cascade over into the California area. So pretty big area, some rough, rugged terrain. Our firefighters have been prepared, have been trained, and of them, we have 144 this year. That's pretty similar to what we had last year. We do still have some shortages in our staffing, and really that's due to affordable housing, pay, et cetera. And I would offer up that all the agencies have some similar challenges, but it's not for lack of trying. We've done really well to maintain the staffing that we have, as was mentioned, and do not have any key shortages in our firefighting workforce that would pose any concerns to the public. Of note, our firefighting assets have 6 fire engines. We have 3 hand crews. We have an interagency hotshot crew up outside of Prospect. We also have the Siskiyou Rappel crew out of Grants Pass, Oregon. It's a 21-person rappel crew that can go into the steep backcountry, rappel from helicopters, and get those deep fires that are in the backcountry early and be aggressive with that initial attack. Also here in Jackson County, we have the Medford Air Tanker Base. Really proud of that asset that we share with the ODF. They stage an aircraft there. I'll let Tyler talk about his assets. But for us, we have the ability to load both large air tankers and very large air tankers. So we have no limits to the size and type of aircraft that we can reload and support out of that base. It covers not only Southwest Oregon, but down into California and beyond. So a great asset to have. Looking back in the past, I want to recognize the Alameda, the South Obanchain, and the Slater fires from the 2020 season that we had. Devastating fires. Our wishes are with all those that are continuing the recovery. Of those 3, the Slater fire is the one that truly impacted our lands. It came over with a vengeance, about 8 miles wide at the fire front, and it was moving towards Cave Junction, our Wild Rivers Ranger District. That was our focus point for 2020. With the exception of that fire, however, the last 2 years, we've had high success rate with initial attack. Approximately 100 fires for 70 acres burned with the exception of that Slater fire. So kudos go out to our firefighters and the support that we've got not only from the ODF, but from the BLM, our partner agencies, in that aggressive initial attack and coordinated response. 144 firefighters for 1.8 million acres. Offer up, that's definitely not enough. But with the 3 agencies working together in unison, we just experienced that the other day with a fire outside of Applegate Lake. A coordinated response on that resulted in minimal acres burned, and ultimately it ended up being on ODF protected lands, but was initially reported on us. Doesn't matter what agency, doesn't matter what resource is responding, we took action together and kept that fire small. Our leader's intent from my forest supervisor, Merv George, is that during fire season, the heart of fire season, the heat, when we have 100-degree temperatures, east winds, all the anomalies that we deal with here as residents of this community, is that we will put out all fires as quickly as possible, as small as possible, and as safely as possible. I know that there's the let it burn conversation that's out there. I want to quash that right now. We do not have that on the Rogue River Siskiyou National Forest during fire season. Now, during the shoulder seasons, Representative Wallan talked about smoke. It's the same smoke I breathe at my house in Grants Pass. So we're really sensitive to that as well. I have an aged father here in Medford, and he struggles during the fire season as well. So it's keen and in our minds as well. But during those shoulder seasons, treating the lands with prescribed fire, mechanical treatment, all the options we have available to us, they're key to our success. Pace and scale and moving forward with treating the landscapes and the communities that we protect are forefront in our minds, and our forest supervisor backs us up on that wholeheartedly. So, as Representative Wallan asked in her intro, what can we look for you to do to help us? In the shoulder seasons, be patient. Let us do our job to the best of our ability and know that we have good intent. Listen to the messages that we share with you and respond feedback. We love to hear what the community's thinking and how we can improve. During fire season, be safe. 4th of July weekend is coming. Not only do we have the fireworks threat potentially, but we also have a slight potential for some lightning in the forecast. So for that, we have boosted our severity resources to augment the assets that we have with the Forest Service from our contract community, which we rely on heavily. A great component and support from those folks. We couldn't do it without them as well. And also our municipalities take a key role in it also. That's what I have for an update, and know that we are prepared to the best of our ability. Aggressive initial attack is our motto, and we look forward to working with our partner agencies to protect the communities and you folks. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. That was, if you listened carefully, you heard him say the let it burn policy doesn't have any room in the Rogue Siskiyou forest. In other parts of the country, that does occur, but it's not happening here, and we are very grateful to our forest superintendent for that. Next, we have Tyler McCarty, who is from ODF, and you may hear these two agencies have done a lot, as you heard, to work together to put fires out and keep them small, especially during this season. And you'll hear that for sure from our ODF person.
So just a brief introduction. My name's Tyler McCarty. I serve as the district forester for ODF. So ODF covers private land protection in Josephine and Jackson counties, similar to Dan's ownership on the Rogue River Siskiyou. It's 1.8 million acres. And then we also provide fire protection for the BLM, who's also here, through an agreement or an operating plan. So a bit of background on myself. I was actually born and raised in the Rogue Valley. Born in Phoenix, Oregon, at my house on 4th Street, about a block away from the Alameda Fire. My entire family lives here. I've got about 50 relatives, and so got a lot of ties and care about them breathing smoke as well, like Dan mentioned. I've got 22 years fighting fire in this valley, and also serve as one of the incident commanders on one of the 3 ODF incident management teams. So I want to reflect back a little bit like Dan did. Last year we had an incredibly successful season. On ODF's jurisdiction, we ran 278 fires for a total of 274 acres burned. It was a huge success, and we couldn't have done it without our partner agencies, the BLM, the Forest Service, and all of our rural firefighting partners. It was a true team effort last year. So ODF has a protection goal that we try to put 98% of our fires out at 10 acres or less. Last year we were able to put 97.8% out. So rounding up, we met our goal. And we're looking forward to carrying that success into this upcoming fire season. On ODF, we've got 130 firefighters that finished fire school last week. They're geared up, they're in the field, and are responding to fires, and have been all this week. Like Dan mentioned, we had a fire out in the Applegate yesterday and had a couple today as well. So they're staying busy, and like Dan said, there's lightning in the forecast. So resources that we're gonna have this year. So we have 26 fire engines staffed between the 2 counties. That's up 3 from last year. With the passage of Senate Bill 762, it gave us additional funding to add equipment and personnel to our engines. We have 8 guard stations. We have a detection camera system that's made up of 15 sites scattered throughout the 2-county area. We have trained detection specialists that are looking out for smokes when they're detected. The fire out in the Applegate yesterday was actually first detected from our detection center. So huge success. Actually, last season they had 66 initial detections out of that 278, which is more than what we historically saw with staffed lookouts. We're also going to have 2 dozers, 2 tenders, 3 hand crews. We're going to have 3 helicopters, 1 based out of Merlin, 2 based out of Medford. We're going to have our air attack platform, which is going to be based out of the Medford air tanker base, as well as our next generation large air tanker that should come on sometime mid-July. We're also adding 2 additional camera sites in the valley. One's going to be up on Mount Ashland, working through some agreements there, as well as one on King Mountain, which is in the far northwest corner of the county. One thing we're doing different this year is we added a swing shift, so we're staffing ODF engines later into the evening, which is going to help us manage some of the fatigue in our firefighters. So looking forward to testing that out this summer. From a statewide perspective, ODF's all of our severity assets, we have assets stationed throughout the state. All of those contracts have been finalized, and there's a schedule for them to start coming on in the coming weeks. And then all 3 of our incident management teams are fully staffed and ready for this summer. Although if you look back, the last couple of years were really tough, right? They started really early and were pretty long seasons. This year we've gotten a little bit of a reprieve in the spring, right? We've gotten some significant precip over the last several weeks, but things are starting to dry out. And if you live in Southwest Oregon and have lived here for any amount of time, you know that mid-July through the end of September, we're going to face the threat of large fires. And like Dan said, we're going to leave no doubt that collectively as agencies that we did everything possible to try to stop any fire from becoming large. And like he said, you can help us. If you can be familiar with our rules and regulations, that's one less spark that's going to start a wildfire that we're going to have to come and put out. So now's the time to get your properties in shape. If you guys have any questions about how to make your homes or property more fire resilient, feel free to reach out to ODF, and we're more than willing to send a forest officer or engine out to do a home inspection. So that's my update. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. That was one of the things I did learn when I first took office, was that Oregon Department of Forestry is funded about 50% by the state, because the state owns a lot of those lands, and 50% by the private landowners whose land they also protect. So there's often big fights in the legislature about that funding. It's always mysterious to me why anyone would balk at paying the state's share of that, since the state owns about half of that land. But we've been able to continue to make sure it's a tax on the small woodlands owners that they choose to pay, but we do have to pass that tax every other year. And it's always funny because I'm a Republican, and so we usually want to vote no on tax bills, but I always advocate for my Republican colleagues, don't forget to vote yes on the fire tax bill, because we do need that funding. And we have been able to keep it intact, partly because we Republicans have agreed to vote yes on it. So that's one of the really important components of how ODF is able to put out those fires as rapidly, is because we do make sure that they are funded. There's always fights about the funding, but we do work really hard to make sure we preserve that. So next we're going to hear from Holly Powers, who is that county emergency manager I was bragging about earlier.
Good evening. My name is Holly Powers. I am the Jackson County Emergency Manager. I'll follow a little bit in Tyler's footsteps and just give a quick background. I was hired by Jackson County as the emergency manager in May of 2021. And over the past year, I've been working under direction from the Board of Commissioners and the county administrator to really focus on a few very key priorities within the emergency management realm that we are responsible for. And I'll go ahead and cover those as I work through my presentation. So one of those key points was the increase in staffing within the emergency management department. We were allocated an additional full-time position for an assistant emergency manager to assist in the coordination and the rest of the planning that I'll be covering here shortly. Additionally, we also added our Rogue Valley Integrated Fire Plan Coordinator. And this position is specifically shared between Jackson and Josephine County, and work with all of our state, local, and federal partners on developing fuels mitigation works and plans, and specifically updating our community wildfire protection plan, which is very focused on our communities and that wildland-urban interface, or WUI interface, and how we can better put down some fuels work in that space to prevent wildfires impacting our communities. So both those positions were filled. The assistant emergency manager had that was hired, had an unaccounted for event that happened and is now having to move to Texas. So we're currently recruiting for our new assistant emergency manager. My second priority was to update and work fully through our emergency alerting system, or Citizen Alert, that's powered by Everbridge. Shortly before I started, the state of Oregon purchased Everbridge for every county within the state of Oregon under the Or Alert umbrella. And while Jackson and Josephine County were already an Everbridge partner, we were able to add quite a few features to our system under the new Or Alert contract, which has really increased our ability to send effective and efficient messaging when needed and called for throughout the county. We've also been working very hard on training additional alert senders and working with our city partners to make sure they have access as appropriate to send those alerts when they feel it is needed. So on that, I do want to do the plug here for make sure you are signed up, make sure your friends and family are signed up for Citizen Alert. If you go to jacksoncounty.org/alert, you'll see some additional information about the types of alerts that we might send through Citizen Alert. And then there will be a link there so you can create an account. You can put up to 5 phone numbers, 2 text messages, 3 emails, and 5 addresses. So for me, I have my work, my home, my daughter's daycare, and her school. So anytime there would be an emergency alert sent to any of those 4 addresses, I would receive that on my work cell, my home cell, phone call, and text message, as well as email addresses. For anyone who needs some assistance signing up, they can call Jackson County Emergency Management, and we'll be more than happy to help them sign up and make sure they're in the system or check update information as needed. So that's been definitely my biggest priority over the last year in updating that system. Another key feature that came with the state's program under that was statewide templates for all of our main evacuation, level 1, 2, and 3, which include a full Spanish translation. So all of our alerts will be coming out in English and Spanish as we move forward. My third priority was emergency operations planning and coordination, and that was really focused on updating our plans, including our emergency operation plan, which is currently in its final draft, and this is the county's emergency operation plan. We are working in coordination with our city's municipal partners to make sure we don't have any conflicting policies or regulations within those plans, and then we'll be assisting the cities in updating their plans as well. We hope to bring that to the Board of Commissioners in the next few months for review, adoption, and promulgation. Additionally, on the emergency operations planning, we've been focused on increasing our communication plans and coordination with specifically our municipal partners and key stakeholders throughout the county so that we can really improve our coordination during response and recovery from any type of catastrophic event. With that, I'll transition into, breathing into this mic, just really quickly kind of to talk on evacuation and emergency sheltering, because that's always kind of a key component as we walk into fire season. Currently, Jackson County has 6 cities who have completed evacuation zoning. So if you live within the incorporated areas of Ashland, Central Point, Jacksonville, Medford, Talent, or Phoenix, please go to your municipality's websites and know your zone. They'll all have a signifier, and any alert that I send from the county's alert system will have those zoned identified for evacuation purposes. The rest of our incorporated cities and towns, as well as the unincorporated areas of Jackson County, we're currently working through those evacuation zoning processes and hoping to have those done soon. And then there will be a big public outreach for a Know Your Zone campaign across the county. And we'll all be in synchronization at that point. As far as emergency sheltering, we do work closely not only with the Red Cross, but other community-based organizations, and have identified a list of 25 plus different facilities that could be used for emergency sheltering as needed. We don't have one space. It is not a go to the expo. It is based on the incident. We will find the best facility that will meet the need of the incident, and we will staff and appropriately create emergency sheltering at that space. And we choose that again based on the location. Residents may also hear something called a temporary evacuation point. This would be after an evacuation is issued, but before a shelter is set up. It would be a space you can go for future information on where the shelter would be. It's usually going to be large parking lots or common congregating spaces in a community, and we would send people there and then send updates from that space. And then I'm going to kind of end here on my little PSA, public service announcement, and talk quickly about our evacuation levels. It is really important that everyone refresh themselves on our 3 levels of evacuation, which are statewide in Oregon. Be ready, be set, go. So level 1 is be ready, and it's now time to prepare for an evacuation. Stay informed, make sure your go kit is ready, maybe get your animals prepared, or if you have someone in your family who might take a little longer to prepare in order to leave. Level 2 is be set, and this means be set to evacuate at a moment's notice. Load your car, pack your things. Maybe this is a time when you feel most comfortable leaving. And I would like to highlight that, right? It is your responsibility to take your and your family's safety into your own hands. So if at any point you feel uncomfortable in a situation, leave. Don't wait for an emergency alert. Look at your neighbors, and if there's a community census to go, that is absolutely a priority and a responsibility of us, all of us as individuals. And then level 3 is go now. That means there's immediate danger and you need to evacuate as quickly as possible. Don't stop to gather your belongings, get everyone in the car, and leave as safely as possible. Still follow traffic rules, leave your lights on, and look if you'll see any public safety, follow any rules or posted signs that you see. So level 1, be ready. Level 2, be set. Level 3, go now. And then I'd like to close with, again, going back to the individual responsibility on personal preparedness. I have a few in the back here. This is a Josephine and Jackson County joint effort to pull pretty much all of the emergency preparedness information that you can find in thousands of different flyers into one booklet. So we talk about the different evacuation levels, talk about different levels of go kits, things you can do to prepare yourself and your family. And really helpful in the back is a preparedness calendar. So it breaks down everything in this book into a 12-month period and how you can periodically update and make your family and yourself more prepared in the event of any disaster, wildfire, earthquake, flood, hurricane, right? Always be prepared for anything. Additionally, on the back table, we have some more information about evacuation levels and citizen alert flyers. Please take these, share with your friends and family, and do everything we can to make sure our neighborhoods and our communities are as prepared as possible. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. One of the reasons that I do brag on Jackson County a lot is because it's remarkable how many bills come to the legislature to bring these kinds of resources to everyone in the state. And I usually find myself saying, doesn't everybody already do that? But they don't. So here in Jackson County, we do a lot of things that are the envy of the rest of the state. Sometimes the rest of the state is impressed, and then sometimes that tips over into jealousy. And so that's an interesting balance. It's an interesting line to walk in Salem, but a lot of communities don't even have one place for people that they know that they're supposed to go in an emergency. We have not just go to the expo, but also we're preparing for 6 other places. Because as you know, if you've been here, the expo is sometimes nearly on fire itself, so that's not always the safest place to go. And that's why every county should have an emergency manager, because these kinds of things do need to be thought about ahead of time, so that the after-action report isn't quite so grim. So thank you, Holly, very much for that. Next, we're going to hear from a representative from the Sheriff's Office. Sheriff Sickler's, I think his son has a baseball tournament tonight. So we have the Sheriff's Department represented by Deputy Sheriff Richards, and is that right?
Yes.
Richards. And so we're going to hear from him about some of the things that the Sheriff's Office, well, just what's the Sheriff's Office responsibility in both an urban or a wildland fire setting?
Thank you very much. Like I said, I am not the sheriff. I'm probably the appropriate person to be here, though, because I'm the operational side of things for fires. So I'm a sergeant with the Support Services Division. So we do search and rescue, marine patrol, all the extra stuff. So we get the task of fire interaction. So I guess what do we do during a fire? Our number one priority is to carry out by ORS to carry out evacuations. So to physically go out and carry out evacuations of people that need to be evacuated. So the important thing there, though, that I want people to understand is, so my job in a fire, like I had one just right before I moved in here. I had big plans of going home, putting my Class A uniform on, tie. Well, that didn't work out because we had a fire. But so I'll go to the fire. My main concern is to find the incident commander, both on the wildland side and the structural side. So I just stand in their hip pocket, and then they make the decision of what needs to be evacuated because they're the fire experts. So they make their best evaluation. They give me the information, and then the second part of my job is to liaison with the emergency management and the other agencies to get the word out, either by electronic evacuations or social media, those things. So that's what I do. And then if we do have to do evacuations where people have to leave their homes, we take it very seriously that we are going to maintain security on those homes 24/7 until you are back at your home. And that's very, very important to us because, you know, we're asking you to leave. So it's our responsibility to make sure your house is taken care of. Yeah, what have we done? What updates? You know, we constantly, we realize at the Sheriff's Office, and I think in this community, that relationships are number one. You have to maintain relationships with the people that you work with. So I think I've seen most of these guys on a weekly basis all spring, and just to keep those lines of communication up. So we just continue to hammer on building relationships and communicating with people because that's where we have success. So, there you go. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I hope I didn't steal all of Commissioner Dyer's thunder bragging about the county. So hopefully he's going to brag about the county some more and about how they, from the bird's eye view of being the commission, are managing all of these different aspects of a lot of Jackson County is wooded, and so there's a lot of fire issues to be thinking about.
Thank you all for coming. Obviously a vital issue here in Jackson County. And I don't have a whole lot of substantive information to add. Obviously you heard from a lot of these subject matter experts here, and they are the experts, and they are some of the best around. And the best thing about it, I think, that I take away from something like this is just a collaboration. The communication, the collaboration, exactly what we said we pretty good here in Jackson County in Southern Oregon, but really that's, I think, the biggest improvement we've seen. We've got our federal, state agency partners, our local government, state government, federal, everybody in this area seems to be on the same page, and that's really important. And that's why we have seen this success. We've seen some issues and some events that are tragic and unfortunately unavoidable, but most of what the story that's not told is what we've prevented here. And I do think that's a lot because we do have such a great team. And again, one of the things that we really, really wanted to accentuate here is that collaboration, that communication, and not just between all of the agencies and government entities, but also people. We wanted to make sure we have the best communication to our citizens. Events like this, our alert systems, and all of the resources we're bringing to make sure that you're part of that cooperation and that team. And I think it's coming together, and I think we're probably a model for not just the state, but probably the country in that area. And one of the things that we do, we talk a lot about, we had a joint meeting in one of our commissioners' meeting
a couple weeks ago, and we talk about, well, what resources do we have this year? And we have, again, fairly robust resources. They're improving. We have personnel that, again, at least we're not losing workforce. That's something that I think most other industries are losing. And all those things are great, but the last question I always ask is, what's the policy? Because it doesn't matter what resources you have, if you're not using it, employing good policy, and that is 100% full suppression during fire season, aggressive initial attack, all the things that we do here that do, again, keep us as safe as we possibly can. And I want to thank everybody that's here and some that aren't here, because we are on the same page and it's working and it's benefiting all of Jackson County. So thank you.
And yes, our last speaker is going to be Mayor Randy Sparacino, Mayor of Medford, and talking about some of what the city of Medford has been able to do to address the urban fires, the urban fire situation, because those are not only dangerous to structures, but also can pump out a lot of smoke, as we all know.
So I'm Mayor Randy Sparacino. I'm the mayor of the city of Medford, and I'm going to give you a brief update on what the city of Medford is doing. But before I do that, I want to echo what Commissioner Dyer said about cooperation. We are lucky to live in Jackson County. We have agencies that cooperate. We have agencies that communicate. For those of you that don't know this, prior to me being the mayor, I was the chief of police for the city of Medford. And I've gone to many conferences across the state and across the nation, and it's not like that everywhere. We are very lucky that we have cooperative agencies and a state agency that is cooperating, federal agencies that cooperate. Prime example, the Alameda Fire. Medford Fire Department was one of the prime responders to the Alameda Fire. The fire was not in the city of Medford yet, but they aggressively attacked that fire. City of Medford personnel from our police department were primary evacuators for the cities of Talent and Phoenix. Those are big issues, and that's because of cooperation. Because the sheriff couldn't do it alone, we had to join in, and we all helped out. And it's always all hands on deck in Jackson County, and we're really lucky to live in the beautiful place that we do, and with the cooperation that we have and the wonderful individuals that work there. So part of what happens in the city of Medford, we also have an emergency manager. We were early adopters in the citizen alert system a long, long time ago, long before I was even considering thinking about being a mayor. We had the citizen alert system. It's a fantastic system. I encourage everyone, that's my public address PA type thing. Sign up, citizen alert. I'm signed up. My wife signed up. It's very important. When we had the Alameda Fire, we were on the ready evacuation list, so be sure you do that. So as far as the city of Medford is concerned, the city of Medford has 3 primary wildland fire areas that some folks might not be aware of. The city of Medford has a rural fire district, Fire District 2, which is in the southwest area of Medford, and it bumps up against Forest Service land. We also have Prescott Park, which is also forested land. And then we have the Greenway that runs right through the middle of town, which is also a fire-prone area. So as a city, we are actively engaged in ensuring that the areas that we have under our control, Prescott Park and the Greenway, are actively maintained to reduce fire load. So we, on an annual basis, go between both areas and reduce the fuels in those 2 areas. The Greenway is a tough place to work. It's a lot of Greenway. There's 8 miles of Greenway that go through the city of Medford, and it's very overgrown. So we have actually applied for a grant to help us out to continue to clean up the Greenway and get rid of basically the blackberry bushes that, if you've ever seen a blackberry bush go into flames, it's like igniting turpentine. So we are trying to get rid of those blackberry bushes because they are a prime igniter for wildland fires within the city of Medford. Additionally, to prepare for wildfire season, we are increasing our staffing with brush trucks during hazardous high hazard days. We are going to have a Bear Creek Greenway Fire Patrol that's going to be assigned and dedicated with fire personnel that will patrol the Greenway during fire season, which has effectively started already. We also are working with our law enforcement and ODF to create protective lines and access points and dozer lines along the Greenway. So in the event that a fire does start, we already have protected lines built in along the Greenway to help protect the fire from spreading. And additionally, we are applying for additional grants to help reduce smoke. We applied for a DEQ grant, a FEMA hazard mitigation grant, a FEMA natural hazards mitigation grant, a hospital preparedness grant, and a state fire marshal wildfire staffing grant. So in the event we get all of those grants, we'll be able to beef up our fire responses, and those are the things that we're doing within the city of Medford to help prepare us for wildfires. Additionally, as Holly stole my thunder, we also have on our website our evacuation routes. Those have been recently posted. So I would like to encourage anybody to take a look at the City of Medford's website and review your evacuation routes, especially in those areas that I discussed at the beginning. If you live on the east side of Medford, near Prescott Park, you need to know your way out. There's a couple of choke points, so look at those evacuation sites, because if you follow those accordingly, they were planned and studied to get everyone out of there safely in the event of a wildfire. Doing the same thing for the southwest area of Medford and Jackson County and that urban interface. Additionally, one of our legislative agendas, we talked about smoke a little bit, and we all know how smoke is hazardous and has caused issues in Medford and Jackson County. Our legislative agenda is to reduce wildfire smoke in Medford. That's one of the things that we do. And I, as the mayor, have lobbied to do what I can to try to reduce wildfire smoke in Medford. And one of the ways that we can reduce wildfire smoke is to reduce fuel loads in the national forest and in the state forest. So I will continue to lobby for that to try to improve our air so that our businesses don't go away during smoke season. So with that, I will remind you once again, sign up for Citizen Alert and look at your evacuation routes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. We were so efficient with our time, and I think we have, I'm willing to take some questions. So if anybody, if you didn't get your question answered by the presentations, go ahead and raise your hand and I will call on you. Yes.
Well, first of all, Scott Perry, I live in Central Point. Really appreciate you putting this together. This has been really informative, and I just as a citizen really appreciate it. You talked about introducing or trying to get some legislation passed so that the first agency or entity that comes upon a fire can put it out right away.
Right.
As I listen, it sounds like the cooperation and the kind of the priority of everybody is that that's maybe already happening in this county. I'm wondering if that were to pass, and I don't understand why somebody would not vote for that. I mean, that just makes logical sense, and I can't understand what the political reason or other jurisdictional reason would be. Maybe you can address that too. But I'm wondering if that were to pass, would that improve anything in Jackson County, or are things already so cooperative and smooth amongst agencies that everybody's got that priority to put a fire out immediately if they see a small one, and there's no jurisdictional squabbles or anything about doing that?
In Jackson, here locally, that cooperation has been built recently. At the time I first introduced that bill, it was 2019, and that it wasn't happening anywhere. It has started to happen since then. The Labor Day fires of 2020 changed a lot of people's attitudes about fire. We know we had the fire that took the most homes, but we were not the only fire in the state that weekend. A lot of people in the state are still reeling from their big fires. We lost the most homes, but we're not the only area that lost homes. So attitudes have changed since 2019 when I first introduced that bill. I still don't think it would pass for the rest of the state. I don't think everyone is as cooperative as we are, and I don't think they want to be. We are more cooperative down here. You heard that from everybody. And so would it change much down here? Probably not. I don't think it would make it worse, but I don't know that it would make any changes here. I think it might change things in the rest of the state. And you all know it's true what we heard today, that the fires in Rogue River Siskiyou National Forest have been put out when they were small in the last couple of seasons. But we still had smoke. And that's because it got here from California fires and Washington fires and Canadian fires. So even when our forest is being managed well, other forests that aren't being managed well, other forests that do subscribe to a let it burn policy. Now that's not true on the Oregon Department of Forestry lands, but again, Washington, California, they have different philosophies, and when those winds blow the wrong way, it blows in here anyway. I don't know if that answered your question, but yes.
Hi, Ken Romney, I'm a resident of Ashland. I've got two questions. One is regarding fuel mitigation in the county, and the second, which I feel is the most important, is about communications, public information and communications. During the Alameda fire, there were several hiccups that occurred in terms of communicating to the public, in terms of evacuations, what's going on, what they should do. What has been done to address those issues? And I know we are relying heavily on Everbridge, Nixle, other means of getting information out. And also related to that, what kind of coordination, cooperation are we getting from the cell phone providers to make sure that their cell sites will be working during similar events in terms of power and such, because we did have a number of those systems go down, so people were unable to get the alerts. And then the second question is regarding what is the county doing to mitigate heavy fuels that surround the municipalities, the brush, the grass. I know in Ashland we've been working very hard to mitigate fuels within the city limits, but when we get to the county, oftentimes we're faced with tall grass, brush that is an imminent hazard. So maybe communications first and then fuels mitigation.
And I am going to pass both of those questions on to other people. We can have Holly talk about the communications, and then I'm not sure who's going to address the other one, but probably not me.
Okay, so as far as emergency communications, I spoke to it a little bit in my presentation. So very specifically over the last year, we've been working diligently on updating our system, including building templates that make the ability to send an alert instead of maybe 20 minutes down to 5 minutes. And that's because we're templating the majority of the language. So it's just more specifically working with the sheriff's office or our fire partners to understand the locations that need to be evacuated and then describing those in language and then being able to send the messaging. The zoning we're doing similar to the cities will also increase that effectiveness because we'll just be selecting a pre-jurisdictionally defined area, so those messages will come out. I wasn't here during the Alameda fire, and so I can't speak to the specificity of some of the hiccups you were referring to during the notification process. However, based on after actions and review and interviews I've done with other providers, the emergency alert system or citizen alert is just one of the tools in our toolbox for alerting. Sergeant Richards really talked about that door-to-door, and that's another one of those tools. So any municipality, including the county or any of our cities, are going to look at what's the most effective way to communicate what's happening at that time and have that communication be as accurate as possible. And so the door-to-door was primary. There's been numerous studies done that any individual has to validate information at least 3 times before they take action. So even if an alert was sent, someone is still going to look at the alert and then try and pull it up on Facebook or on the website or poke their head out their door and check to see what their neighbors are doing before they take action. So we really try and focus on your preparedness as an individual and as a community, because a message is more effective if my neighbor says it and I get an alert and I see a sheriff's deputy roll up. So we really try and maximize as much of the communication across the board, and we've prioritized updating and upgrading our Everbridge or citizen alert system over the last year to ensure we can message more appropriately or more effectively.
Follow would the emergency broadcast system be utilized because it wasn't during the Alameda fire?
That will be situationally dependent, right? And that again goes back to communicating with our first responder entities, seeing what the situation is on the ground, speaking to make sure that we're alerting appropriately. The emergency alerting system, which is TV and radio, is not locationally based. So if I send an emergency alert, it will not only hit Jackson County, it'll hit Josephine, Douglas, and Klamath, and everyone will get this emergency alert. So we're very specific when we utilize those larger notification systems to ensure the people who need that information right now get it. Because the last thing we want to do is over alert. I imagine Sergeant Richards can tell you stories about people coming from outside the area because they heard about a fire. That impedes our first responders' abilities to get in and protect life and property, as well as the people who need to leave to get out. So we are always in constant communication with our law and fire partners to make sure that we are alerting in the best operational tactics possible. And that's why the coordination between us is so important, and why we literally do, I think, see each other on an almost daily basis. So that's on that part. You also talked about some communication coordination with our cellular providers. We do coordinate and work with them. However, we can't control a cell tower burning down or line getting cut or being burned over. And cell towers will always be impacted dramatically during any type of event because everyone's on their phone or trying to get on the internet. And some of those things can't be mitigated at a local level. That would be the State Public Utilities Commission and other components, FCC, that level of thing. So we do coordinate and make sure we're communicating appropriately with them and asking for additional bandwidth if possible, but there's some of those things that are absolutely out of our control.
Recently, I've seen a kind of a culture shift in the state of Oregon, right? This last legislative session, SB 762 gave a really large chunk of money for fuel reduction to the tune of $25 million. A good chunk of that came to Southern Oregon to fund projects like the West Bear project that Lomacatsi is working on, which uses multiple funding sources, not just state funds, but federal funds as well, to do landscape scale fuel reduction in Southern Oregon. And it also funded a variety of other projects in Southern Oregon. At ODF, one of the things that we struggle with sometimes is our workforce is seasonal during the summer. Well, I actively work to keep those, and not just me, the rest of the managers that work underneath me, we actively pursue grants to keep our employees employed year round. And so we're applying for Western States grants and doing fuel reduction or giving out I can't remember what it's called, but a chunk of money to landowners to do the fuel reduction themselves. And so we actively look for those grant opportunities to keep our folks employed. So that's, I guess that's my answer.
Bob.
Hi, Kim. I want to thank you for a wonderful booklet. It will occupy prime real estate on the coffee table through the summer.
Take more. Share them.
Well, I walk downtown quite a bit, but I don't, my son gets out in the woods. But yeah, I am hoping that more than just the people in this room get this information so they could assimilate it as well. Because had I not shown up here, I would have missed out on quite a bit of information that's very important, very real time. So thank you. I hope it gets out there. One question, it would be nice not to have a big giant spreadsheet, but to have some information consolidated from county, state, city, and all that, where the monies are all coming in from, federal, state, and all that, so people could see the amount of money's coming in, and just basically where it's going, and the fact that grants are being asked for, so that people can support your goal in getting those grants. And on one location, whether that be county, city, or somewhere, where John Q. Public could kind of find that and be informed. Because information is key. Brief question. I think Mayor Sparacino may appreciate this. As for Forest Service, how much do elk, deer, free-range cows do to contribute to lowering the grasses and the risk for wildland fire? And will there be more of that? Because they work cheaper than people do.
I do have a fairly lengthy title, so Fire, Fuels, and Aviation Staff Officer. Range is not part of that. So I'll do the best I can to share that. Yeah. In terms of the Forest Service, we don't have really a robust range program in terms of cattle. Now, elk and natural animals, they're going to do their thing regardless of jurisdiction. So not a whole lot of amazing forage for that animal on our lands. So I don't have numbers for you. I do know that any help we can get from 2- and 4-legged folks would definitely be appreciated. So yeah, that's kind of what I got. Really not much of an answer for you because I'm not the specialist on that. But if you look for further information, I can get with you after this.
What is the actual threshold where you would use emergency broadcast system?
So just to reiterate the question, what is the threshold to use the emergency alert system or the broadcast agencies? We don't necessarily have a predefined threshold. So there's not like a once it meets this. Obviously, the broader and bigger an event, the more likely we are to use the emergency alert system. But again, this is where all of those decisions are going to be made during the event with the subject matter experts. So Sean alluded to the fire right before up on East Antelope. I think we talked maybe 4 times in an hour time frame just to touch base and make sure while I was sitting with the alerting system up ready to go. So that's the kind of communication that happens and how we would be speaking and trying to work through what's the appropriate alerting process. And again, we want to make sure we're utilizing all of our tools as best as possible and support the protection of life and property first. And so whatever application is needed, you can probably talk to our fire folks here about the different ways they fight fire based on the topography, the winds, the heat, right? And it's never exactly the same. And alerting falls into that realm as well. So there's not we will not do that by any means. It's here's everything that's in front of us and how do we choose the best thing to make sure we're effectively communicating.
There's a common thought process on it. Like during the Almea fire, I live on the east side of Medford, and I made 3 trips to make sure the fire wasn't crossing over the hill coming up at us. And there was no alert system, no information that allowed me to do anything more than to finish my driving over there at 11 o'clock at night. And that's, I don't know, I don't look at it as intrusionary that people, okay, how many people would drive down here to see the fire? Bear in mind that I have to make a decision to get my wife out and myself out. But we weren't burning, but with the wind shift we could have been. But I just, something in information needs to be transferred, I would believe.
And that is a difficult situation. So again, our emergency alert system is address-based, so that's a lot of what we try to focus on. If you don't receive an alert, then you haven't been identified in that space. Another aspect that we implemented this year, starting last fire season, was a keyword notification. So any person anywhere can opt in to receive a text message anytime a level 1, 2, or 3 notification is sent. So you just text Jackson EVACS, all one word, to 888-777. And that's kind of an informal way. So no matter where you live, you understand that there could be evacuations happening throughout the county. But again, I want to focus on that alerting system is similar to the door-to-door process. We need to make sure the people who need it now get it. And so expanding some of those alerting processes can dilute the messaging and people don't take action. I've read a lot of case studies. I come from Northern California and have been involved in multiple fire evacuation avenues, and alerting is always a struggle to make sure we're doing it as best we can. So we do a lot of work on making sure we're implementing best practices, reading all the studies and cases that come out post large events and implementing that as best we can. We actively participate in the Oregon Alert Governance Committee and provide feedback on all of the templates that are being provided statewide since we experienced the Labor Day fires of 2020. So we're actively participating as best we can to improve the system overall and make sure we're implementing all of our tools the best we can.
As far as getting real-time information to people, there's a new program being instituted. It's called Alert Wildfire. And what it is going to be more urban located cameras and a public-facing website. So an individual citizen will be able to get on the website and actually see the fire activity, which I think is going to give you a lot better information to your specific situation than even an alert that may go out to 100,000 people. And those cameras are being installed. They're high definition. You'll be able to get a lot of information that may be more useful to you from those as well.
I can't emphasize enough how important the citizen alert system is in getting on that citizen alert system. And I'll explain how it works a little bit. So Holly mentioned that you can put 5 phone numbers in there, you can put email addresses in there, and you can put your address in there, and it will attempt to contact you at each one of those until you acknowledge that you received the alert. So you will know that you're going to be under whatever level of evacuation they chose to send that alert out to. And because you have to respond yes, or you have to answer the phone and say yes, or email back yes, and then it stops alerting you. So it'll keep attempting to contact you, and I can't remember what the setting is, how many times it does that. But when we had it set up just for Medford, it would attempt to contact you 3 times before it gave up. So it's super important, and it is our means to get that information out focused and targeted so the right people get evacuated when they need to be. So not everybody's clogging that road that we need to get those vital people off of the fire.
Does it show up on caller ID so it's not misconstrued as spam?
I believe it does show up as...
Not always.
Oh, it doesn't?
Not always. I give you the phone number.
Yeah. If you enter that phone number into your phone, though, it will recognize it.
Because you've entered it.
Robin.
Robin Lee, I live in Medford. I'm curious about what you said about the calling up Jackson evac 888 what? And do you do that when I do that when I've heard that, oh, there might be a fire at Central Point, or is that part of the regular system?
Okay. So first I'll say, if you go to jacksoncounty.org/alert, that's where all of this information will be written down, and it'll describe the different types of alerts that can be sent. And so the phone number that Citizen Alert will come from Jackson County, wait, let me write it down so I make sure. Is 541-897-8556. And that is the same caller ID. That number is listed on that web page, and you're just going to create a contact within your cell phone. It says Citizen Alert, Emergency Alert, whatever associate a contact name you need to understand that that is coming from the Citizen Alert system. Additionally, the keyword, all of that information is on there as well. So Jackson EVACS, so spell it, count Jackson, EVACS, and you would text that to 888-777.
So I could instigate checking on something I'm hearing about. Is that?
So you would do that preemptively. So once you're opted in, then you receive a text message version, so 160 character limit version that says there's a level 1 evac and then a very brief description of the area.
Anywhere in the county.
Anywhere in the county, correct. So it doesn't matter whether your address is impacted or not. And we implemented that last year because we had a lot of citizens calling. I think we issued some evacs out up in the Rogue River area, and I had a lot of Medford and Ashland people calling saying, I heard there's an evac, where is it? And so we worked through some of those new avenues we had in Everbridge under the Or Alert program, and we were able to implement that keyword. So that's one way to get all this information. One other thing I wanted to talk about, just on the communication front in general, is the Sheriff's Office has recently, early last year, hired a public information officer, and that's another contact that I work very closely with. So all this information would be funneled through that public information officer. We literally have a text messaging group and talk on a very regular basis, and would be assisting in communicating that message. Additionally, the Rogue Valley has a PIO coordination group where all of the PIOs from multiple disciplines meet on a quarterly basis so that we can discuss and support. And if and when we need help or any of our partner agencies needs assistance, all of the PIOs come to front and we make sure we're spreading and sharing that message as appropriately as possible. So we're trying to put in the legwork to increase that communication and for the public.
Well, thank you for coming. This is about when we had planned on ending, so thank you so much for bringing your questions, and thank you to all these people for amazing information, and thank you. I'm not planning on doing more of these, but maybe they'll be popular enough that we will. So I'm just very grateful to everyone who came and presented. So thank you.